At the White House, the military doubted the intelligence and estimated that a cruise missile strike would kill or injure over 200 people. In the end, the attack was canceled.
It struck me as rather insane, frankly. They decided not to attack bin Laden because he was in a building in fairly close proximity to a mosque, and they were afraid that some of the shrapnel was going to hit the mosque and somehow offend the Muslim world, and so they decided not to shoot on that occasion. And that's the kind of reason for not shooting that the policymaker anyway came up with endlessly.
Raise your right hand and then put you under oath.
The missed opportunities to capture or kill Osama bin Laden in the 1990s were a key topic in the investigations of the 9/11 Commission. Vice Chair Lee Hamilton defends the policymakers at the Clinton White House.
There's always the question that arises, who else you're going to kill? If they're with other people, what's the collateral damage going to be? How many women and children are going to die? How many innocent people are going to die? And those are decisions that a political leader they have to wrestle with those.
The Clinton administration's last good chance to kill Osama bin Laden was at a falcon hunting camp in southern Afghanistan in 1999. Falcon hunting is wildly popular with the ultra-rich throughout the Arab world. The CIA followed bin Laden to the camp and determined that he was going to stay for a few days. But satellite photos also revealed the presence of a military C-130 aircraft from the United Arab Emirates, indicating that senior officials from the UAE government were hunting with bin Laden. Once again, the White House decided to stand down. They did not want to take the chance of killing some of America's closest allies in the Persian Gulf.
Look, these guys know who bin Laden is. They know he's sponsored murder. He's maimed and killed thousands of Muslims, and they're hosting him. They're welcoming him. They're treating him nicely. As I said to my wife when I came home, I said, well, you know, if you lie down with dogs, you wake up with fleas. And these guys are lying down with the biggest dog in the world, and we ought to take the shot. And the consequences to them, you know, that's, well, too bad.
Members of President Clinton's national security team say they were less concerned about the cost of hitting bin Laden and his friends, and more preoccupied with the cost of missing.
You don't want to look like you can't succeed. That one thing we were very conscious of is that to undertake a number of attacks that failed would not only not achieve our purpose, would actually strengthen bin Laden and his group. It would look like that we couldn't get him and that we were ineffective in getting them.
In December 2000, when George W. Bush was finally declared the winner of the U.S. presidential election, he sat down for a private meeting with Bill Clinton at the White House. In that meeting, Clinton says he told Bush that al-Qaeda was the biggest threat to the United States, and that not catching or killing bin Laden was one of the greatest regrets of his presidency. Did Bill Clinton want bin Laden dead?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Bill Clinton had an enormous frustration that he had ordered, Clinton had ordered al-Qaeda leaders, not just bin Laden, to be arrested. That didn't work. And then he changed the order and said, well, since it's evident that you can't arrest them, you're authorized to kill them. And nothing happened. And he really didn't understand why CIA was so ineffective and couldn't do that.
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office.
On January 20th, 2001, George W. Bush was sworn in as President of the United States. 5 days later, Bush received a memo from his White House counterterrorism director, Richard Clarke, saying, "We urgently need a principles-level review of the al-Qaeda network." That urgently required meeting would not take place for almost 9 months. For the new Bush administration, al-Qaeda was a low priority. In the months leading up to 9/11, while the White House and the CIA were not paying much attention, Osama bin Laden pressed ahead with his preparations to attack the United States. We can now reconstruct what was going on inside al-Qaeda. Because of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, the mastermind of the 9/11 operation. He had been wanted in the United States for years on terrorism charges. Arrested in 2003, Mohammed became a key source of information for the 9/11 Commission.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, he's the one who really got the plot going, originated the plot, talked about how to hire the hijackers and all of that. So he knows more about it than anybody else who's still alive. And so he was immensely important.
The testimony of Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was recently introduced into evidence in a U.S. court. The testimony is based on hours of interrogations. Mohammed proudly described how he sold bin Laden on the idea for the 9/11 attacks and how they settled on methods and targets.
After the 1993 attacks on the World Trade Center, I decided that explosives and bombs could be problematic. And so I focused on using airplanes as weapons. The most attractive targets were high buildings, both for their relative ease of targeting as well as for the symbolic impact. Bin Laden expressed his desire to simultaneously hit the Pentagon, the White House, and the United States Capitol building. He had Nawaf al-Hazmi and Khalid al-Mihdar in mind for the operation.
Khalid al-Mihdar and Nawaf al-Hazmi were al-Qaeda recruits from Saudi Arabia. They had obtained visas to the United States with the hope that Osama bin Laden would send them there on a suicide mission. They were the first 2 hijackers assigned to the 9/11 plot. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed gave the 2 men a basic training course for their mission. He showed them Hollywood movies to teach them how hijackers could seize control of airplanes. He used a flight simulator program to show them the basics of piloting. The program would allow them to practice crashing into buildings. At the time, he did not tell them all the details of his plan.
I told these 2 that they were being sent to the United States for flight training. They weren't provided with the specific targets of the operation. When they left for the United States, even I didn't know what they would be.
Khalid al-Mihdar and Nawaf al-Hazmi became the focus of the greatest intelligence failure in U.S. history because American agents had been following them almost 2 years before 9/11. Their trail was first picked up in December 1999 by the U.S. National Security Agency, which monitors international telephone traffic. An agent was listening in on a telephone line in Yemen that had been previously used by Osama bin Laden. He heard arrangements being made for a trip involving al-Mihdar and al-Hazmi. Both had already been identified as al-Qaeda agents. The CIA tracked the 2 men as they flew to Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and had them followed. They were photographed with other al-Qaeda suspects at a meeting at this condominium on the outskirts of Kuala Lumpur. Then, the CIA lost their trail. 1 week later, the 2 men flew into the United States and landed at Los Angeles International Airport. The CIA knew that Khalid al-Mihdar had a U.S. visa, and yet that information was not shared with the FBI or U.S. immigration.